Welcome to the Worshipped Woman podcast. I am your host, kellykristin. I am a life and relationship coach, deep healing facilitator, and subconscious change expert. On this podcast, we will dive deep into personal growth, transformation, and relationships, releasing patterns of toxicity, codependency, and people-pleasing as we explore what it means to be the worshipped woman. If you are ready to heal, embody your worth, and raise your standards in life and love, you are in the right place. I am so happy to have you here. Now, let's get started. Hello, sisters. Welcome back to the podcast. Kelly here, and I am so happy that you are with me today. And I just recently took about a month-long break from Instagram, and I have got to tell you, it was really, really wonderful. You know, I have this interesting relationship with social media because I love connecting with so many of you. I love being able to give the information. I love being able to have like this platform that is such a great resource for people to come into my world and all of the things that it can bring. And sometimes I find it's just it's too much, right? And there's so many different things going on with like technology and the metaverse and, you know, Instagram with the curated feeds. And you maybe have heard me, or not heard me, but seen me post on my stories sometimes about, the usage of all of these filters and things on Instagram where people are using these filters that change the shape of their face. And I think that's a huge problem. And that's another reason that I wanted to remove myself from the platform and not be on it just for a little while, was because the programming that we're getting from looking at everybody's images and faces filtered all of the time, I think can do a lot of damage, right? Because even if you don't really think about it, subconsciously, you're picking up on somebody else's face that looks, I don't know, however we're supposed to look this day of the week, because the standards for how women are supposed to look change all of the time. But now it's like trendy to have fox eyes and high cheekbones and who knows whatever else, right? And so we're constantly bombarded with these images of, people that we're looking at having no wrinkles on their face, having just no under eye bags, having their face look a way that it doesn't actually look, but we don't perceive it that way. Okay. We perceive it as we see this and our mind just picks it up. That's what they look like. And then we go in the mirror and we see something different. And it can be very damaging to our mind to constantly be shown these filtered images and constantly be shown like the Photoshop stuff and all of these things. And my main point with this is you got to get right with you. And I definitely had to take a little time to get right with me. I'm not immune to these things. And that's why I'm like, gosh, I'm not using these anymore. I don't really want to look at people that do, because I just think it's really messed up. And we also have to remember that these platforms and everything is very, very curated. It is not real life. People are not showing you how they look when they wake up on a friggin' Tuesday morning and their hair's in the bun and they haven't had their coffee yet. You know what I'm saying? So I love to do exercises, and I do this in some of my programs where, you just look in the mirror and specifically pick out things that you love about yourself. And I don't care if it's something like, oh, I love my smile, or I love this freckle that I have, or just something. Go in the mirror and pick out something that you love about yourself and admire yourself and tell yourself you're beautiful, and do it every single morning. That makes such a difference. Such a difference. I know it does for me. I know it does for my clients. That's not even what this episode is about today, and I just felt like I went on this huge tangent about that, but maybe somebody needed that message. So anyway, what we're actually talking about today is boundaries. And we're going to start this boundary conversation in maybe a way that you haven't really heard boundaries talked about before. And I think that this is really, really important because I know if you have been in toxic relationships, you are most likely struggling with boundaries on some level, right? You're most likely struggling with how can people treat me? How can, do I have standards? And do I have things that I enforce? Do I speak to people when I am uncomfortable? Or do I have people-pleasing tendencies? Do I have codependent tendencies where everybody's needs are more important than my own, right? How do I show up in life? These are the questions, right? And let's address, I do have an episode about people pleasing that I think you might want to listen to if you do identify with that term. And it is titled The Truth About People Pleasing. You can go back through and listen to that. It's definitely a very eye-opening episode because I talk about, what is people pleasing really? And I consider people pleasing and codependency kind of along the same lines, where really you put your own needs on the back burner and you make sure that everybody else is okay. You make sure that everybody else is good. And that in its own way is you actually fulfilling a need for yourself. It's you actually staying safe. It's you actually, that's how you feel safe and secure, is by making sure everything is okay. This is something that can happen if you were raised in a household where you had an alcoholic parent, an addict of any kind as a parent. It's really, really common because you had to, kind of make sure that things were good before you were allowed to be okay, right? So it kind of makes sense that you would continue to formate that throughout your life. Also definitely happens if you were growing up in any kind of abusive household at all. You just learn that, okay, in order for me to be okay, I have to make sure that that person that is potentially harming me, potentially lashing out at me, whatever that is, I have to make sure that they're okay. So then you learn in a lot of different ways, kind of like, you don't really matter. You don't really matter that much. Everybody else matters more than you. And then what happens is you end up living your life like that. And that's how we turn into people pleasers. That's how we turn into being, quote unquote, codependent. And there's many different levels to that, right? Sometimes it's really, really obvious. Sometimes there's like more what they call high functioning codependency, where you would be like, oh no, I don't really resonate with being a codependent. However, I do put myself and my needs last. I do make other people's issues more important than my own. And my entire life is basically about everybody else but me. That is definitely a form of codependency. And that's not like a bad word. It's just a thing that is. It's a thing that happens. It doesn't mean anything bad about you. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean you're a good person. It just means you're a person with maybe having some traits where you, don't put yourself first in your own life. Is that bad or is that good? Well, that's up for you to decide. Is it working for you? Because if it is, then, go ahead, keep on keeping on. And if you feel like, gosh, I wish that people considered me more. Gosh, I wish that I could, stand up for myself. Man, I really wish that people treated me better. I wish that I didn't have these resentments that I have. I wish I didn't feel like people were always taking advantage of me. If you have those kind of feelings, well, then, maybe there's something that you want to do about it. And maybe you're like, okay, Kelly, but what the hell does this have to do with boundaries? I thought we were talking about boundaries. And this is very important because boundary work and the work that I do with my clients, we don't start with placing boundaries with other people and in situations, which is certainly part of boundary work. But the first boundaries we work on are with yourself. Because here's the deal. You have to matter to you. Your needs have to matter to you. What is good for you has to matter to you, and you need to act on that. Okay? This is actually the start of having boundaries, right? Because when you are in the people pleaser or codependent sort of status, and everybody and everything is more important than you, even when you are by yourself, if you might have that tendency to not meet your own needs. You might still have that tendency to ignore what you actually need and to not act in a way that you value yourself. You understand? You have to value yourself before you can expect other people to treat you in a way that would reflect that. And why we start here is because it all starts with you. How you show up for yourself and how you treat yourself is how you are teaching other people how to treat you. And what I'm really talking about here, a simple example would be like, you know what, let's say you get up and you have a lot of work to do that day and you're working, and you're like, you know what, I'm thirsty. And you ignore the fact that you are thirsty and that your body is telling you, hey, I need water, I need hydration here. You ignore that and you just keep working, right? Or like you get thirsty and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm really, really hungry. I really need to eat, but I got to do this or that. And I got to, all these things. Again, you're ignoring something that is important for you, that your body is literally saying, I need this. You're saying, no, this is more important than you. And if that is how you treat yourself, then really it would make sense that you attract other people in your life who then also don't value your own needs because you are not valuing them, right? Our relationships are like mirrors. They're like mirrors, reflection of us, of what's going on the inside. So if you're not valuing yourself, if you're not respecting yourself, if you're not honoring yourself, then how is it you're going to expect that other people are going to value, honor, and respect you, right? This is why we start with yourself. This is why it's important when you are working and you are thirsty, you pause and you say, I'm going to get myself a drink here. You know, I'm really, really hungry. All right, I'm going to pause. I need to eat, right? It doesn't matter what else is going on. It doesn't matter if it's inconvenient. It doesn't matter all of these things, all these stories that we have. No, I'm going to do this because this is what I need. This is what my body is telling me that I need. And guess what happens when you do that? You reinforce to yourself that you matter, that what you need matters. Okay? Then that makes it much, much easier to start setting boundaries with other people in your life. Because when you actually have the internal signals of something, hey, something's not right here, if you're used to listening to yourself and what your internal signals are, well, now when you're in a situation with somebody else and maybe you have an internal signal, you're not going to ignore it like the old pattern because you've reinforced over and over again, no, this matters. I listen to myself. I listen to my needs here, right? So now I'm in, some kind of situation with somebody else and I'm feeling that maybe some kind of discomfort in my body or some kind of thing where I'm like, oh, something's not right here. Well, now I'm able to say, hey, that upset me when this happened, or this is making me feel this way, or whatever it is. You can actually speak to your boundaries with somebody else more because you have been respecting them within yourself first. And this is something that I feel like nobody talks about when it comes to boundaries, right? They just like throw you to the wolves. Like, well, you got to start speaking your truth. You got to start doing the things. You got to start, just telling people what's up. And that's can be incredibly terrifying if you have never done that before. And if you do not matter to yourself, if your needs do not matter to you, right? Because what we're actually doing, and this is how I want you to see how this is going to come together. What we're actually doing is we're overriding the old codependency that says this person, everybody else is more important than me. Their need is more important than my own. I got to make sure that they're okay first before I can even think about being okay for myself. What you do is you teach yourself, no, it's important for me to be okay. It's important for me to feel good. It's important for me to take care of me. It's important for me to whatever the needs are, right? You have to rewire your nervous system to set that expectation for yourself. Then all of a sudden, when you're in a position where maybe you would people please, or maybe you would be codependent or all of these things, you can much easier reflect back on the new pattern, right? And so what I want to do through this conversation, what I hope is happening is that I'm increasing your awareness, because awareness is what gives you new choice. It's not like if you've been living in a people-pleasing pattern for 30 years. And then all of a sudden I'm telling you this, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do that again, right? Or you learn one thing or you do one hypnosis and you're never going to do that again. That's not really what it's about. It's about gaining a new level of awareness. It's about practicing how it is that you want to be, right? Practicing, reinforcing that you matter, reinforcing that your needs matter, and then acting in a way that reflects that in your life and continuing to practice that way so then that becomes normal, safe, and familiar for you instead of what is in your subconscious, which is basically, I need to make sure everybody else is okay before I can be okay. And this is why it's really, really important to have a blend of the subconscious work where we can actually go back through and release the beliefs and see where you picked up these tendencies and these patterns and these things. And we can actually see in your subconscious mind where you got this idea from and why it's there, release it, rewire new beliefs. And then you actually have to do the part where you practice it, where you embody this new way of being, where you embody the energy of I matter, my needs matter, I'm important to myself. And then when you are important to yourself, guess what? You will attract people in your life that treat you with value, honor, and respect because you are the mirror. It all starts with you, all of it. And that's a beautiful blessing because by you shifting and changing, you literally shift and change the world that you live in. You're not doomed to repeat any patterns. You're not doomed to stay in any cycle. New awareness brings new choices, but it's the choice that you have to make, and that's the hard part. It's the acting in the new way that's the hard part. But you're here, you're listening to this, and if you're like, gosh, you know what, this is really speaking me, I do have this pattern, I want you to challenge yourself. Really challenge yourself to start tuning in to what your needs are. Start listening to yourself and act quickly when you know that you need to do something for you. And just see if that simple change, see if that simple shift of valuing yourself more, of making yourself matter to you more, see how that shifts what's going on in your world, what's going on in your relationships, if that shifts how you feel. That's the most important part. So I hope that you do that. I really, really do. And if you are doing that, let me know. Send me a message on the Instagrams. I'm at Miss MS kellykristin. If you're listening to this, you loved this episode, or if you feel like somebody else needs to hear it, you want to share it with the world, go ahead, take a screenshot, tag me on your Instagram stories. You can also tag the Worshipped Woman account on Instagram. And if you really loved the episode, if you love my vibe, if you would be so kind to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, I would be so, so grateful. I love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you soon.